You know the story of the Titanic, right? Of course you do. The unsinkable ship, the giant iceberg, the heartbreaking loss of life in the freezing Atlantic. It's become this epic legend of human ambition versus the raw power of nature. But what if I told you that legend is missing its most terrifying chapter? What if the story we all think we know is only half of the truth?
This one question, well, it changes absolutely everything. Because the truth is, there was another ship out there in the darkness. A ship that was close enough to see the Titanic's distress rockets, a ship that could have, and probably should have, saved every single person on board.
For more than 100 years, the narrative has been pretty straightforward. It's a tragedy set in ice. A simple, epic battle between a man-made marvel and an unforgiving ocean. And the timeline of that night is just chillingly precise. At 11:40 p.m., the lookouts spot the iceberg, and it's too late. The collision happens. 25 minutes later, at 12:05 a.m., the captain already knows the ship is doomed. By 12:45 a.m., they fire the first distress rocket, a desperate, fiery plea shot into the black sky. And then, at 2:20 a.m., less than 3 hours after hitting the ice, the Titanic is gone forever.
But here's the thing. For many people huddled on those freezing decks, there was something else out there. Something that wasn't on any official timeline. They saw a light, another ship on the horizon, and to them, this wasn't some mystery. This was salvation.
What's so haunting when you read the survivor accounts is just how certain they were. One survivor, Edith Russell, remembered seeing a steamer with 2 mast headlights, and she said, "We all felt that she would be with us in a very short time." Can you just imagine that feeling? The sheer terror of being on a sinking ship suddenly replaced by this incredible wave of relief. Hope wasn't just some abstract idea. It was right there, a visible light on the horizon. But the lights never got any closer. That ship never came. For the 1,500 people who were about to die, rescue was literally in sight, but it just never arrived. Why? What happened?
Well, to answer that, we have to actually leave the deck of the Titanic for a minute. We need to shift our whole perspective over to that other vessel, that mystery ship. Because while the Titanic was firing desperate rockets into the air, the crew on this other ship was watching them and having a very, very different conversation about what they were seeing.
Turns out, the ship had a name, the SS Californian. It had actually made the smart move and stopped for the night, completely surrounded by the exact same dangerous ice field that had just doomed the Titanic. And here's the crucial part. Official inquiries later placed the Californian somewhere between just 10 and 19 miles away. That's close, really close. Close enough to see, and definitely close enough to help.
So, on the deck of the Californian, the crew clearly saw the rockets. They saw them so clearly they even woke up their captain to tell him about it. But their interpretation of what they saw was just so tragically wrong. An apprentice on board later testified they just figured it was a celebration. You know, they must be having a party, he thought, firing off rockets for the fun of it.
The chain of events that night is just gut-wrenching. Look at this. Right before 11 p.m., the Californian's radio operator tries to warn the Titanic about all the ice. The Titanic's operator, swamped with passenger messages, basically tells him, "Shut up, I am busy." So the Californian's operator, probably a bit frustrated, just turns off his radio set and goes to bed at 11:30 p.m. Just 10 minutes later, the Titanic hits the iceberg. So when the Titanic's first frantic SOS call goes out, the closest ship, the only one that can see its lights, is completely silent. Its radio is off.
In the aftermath, of course, the world demanded answers. This wasn't supposed to happen. Both American and British inquiries were launched, and they very quickly started to focus on the actions, or maybe the inaction, of the SS Californian and its captain, Stanley Lord. And when you look at the testimony, it's a classic case of he said, they said. Captain Lord claimed the rockets he saw weren't distress signals. The inquiry found, nope, they were clearly distress signals. He said the ship he saw wasn't the Titanic. The inquiry concluded it couldn't have been any other ship. He insisted the Californian was too far away to help. The official inquiry determined he was more than close enough to get there and render aid.
The final official verdict? It was absolutely damning. Both investigations, on both sides of the Atlantic, concluded that the Californian could have pushed through the ice and gone to the rescue. It wasn't just a possibility, it was a reasonable expectation. An expectation that was never, ever met.
So why does this missing half of the story matter so much after all these years? Well, because it completely changes how we should think about the tragedy itself. It reframes it from being some unavoidable act of God into something far more human and far more unsettling. And this, right here, is the true tragedy. The story of the Titanic stops being just a story about an iceberg. It becomes a story about human choice. It's a story about inaction, miscommunication, and maybe even indifference. It wasn't just fate dealing a bad hand. It was a failure of people to help other people who were in desperate need.
1,517. That's not just a number. It's the number of people who died in the icy water that night. It's the scale of a catastrophe that quite possibly didn't have to happen.
And let's put this into a really sharp perspective. The ship that did come, the heroic SS Carpathia, steamed full speed through that same dangerous ice to rescue every single survivor. But it only got there 2 hours after the Titanic was already at the bottom of the ocean. The Californian, it was closer, and it saw the rockets for nearly 2 full hours before the ship went down. They had a 2-hour head start. That was the window. That was the time they had to save them all.
And that just leaves us with this one final chilling question. We know the ship's steel plates failed when they hit the ice, that's a fact. But was the greater failure that night a failure of human responsibility? That, I think, is the terrifying and truly missing half of the Titanic story.